This week on The Necessary Entrepreneur, we welcome Tim McDaniel, the Kentuckian who moved west to chase his dreams. Tim is a freelance film production professional currently working in LA for HBO. He has a background in movies, TV shows, commercials, and corporate video. Tim is experienced as a line producer, production manager, production coordinator, and assistant accountant. That's a lot of things. During the conversation, Tim and I talked about the entertainment industry, news media, comparison syndrome, being resilient, and the pros and cons of a college education, which seems to be a popular topic in today's culture. We also talk about happiness versus joy, the drive to prove people wrong, creating a safe place to believe in yourself, understanding that most people are seasonal, and fighting for yourself because no one else is going to fight for you. Hey, thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and hit that subscribe button. I hope you love this one as much as I did. Thanks again. Thanks for coming in.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for having me.
We're in the midst of the holiday season.
Yes.
New Year's is on the way.
Yes.
What will New Year of 2024 bring to Tim McDaniel?
A lot of work, which is nice compared to 2023. We had the actors and writers strikes in 2023, so there was a lot of work stoppage and not a lot of work. But luckily, I'm booked on a couple of shows for next year, so I'll actually be pretty much working the entire year.
So you can pay your bills.
Yeah.
That feels good, doesn't it?
It does, especially after you see those credit cards.
Right, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I saw on your social media, because we do a good job thinking we research folks when they come in. Like, oh, this person's going to be nice, but let's research them. So a Kentuckian who moved west to follow their dreams.
Yeah.
All right. So how'd that go?
That's my little... so far, so good.
Yeah?
I don't, obviously the full dreams are not fully realized, but, it's been 11 years now that I've been in LA, and I'm still there, still working, which I think every year I contemplate whether or not that's going to continue to happen, and we're still here, so it works out. What
goes through the contemplation? Like 11 years, you pretty much have the feel of the lay of the land now, right?
Yeah, I think, I think it's kind of that imposter syndrome that, like, I think anytime a job ends and there's not something that's, like, immediately, like, I'm not booked immediately on the next show, even if I have a couple of weeks off. You're just like, well, that's it. That was a great, however many year run. Thanks so much. I guess I'll never work again. This has been great. And that happens pretty much every time. And it kind of is scary. And I think that, like, my boss has been in the industry for 30 years now. And she feels the same way. And so it's kind of like if our job is ending and we don't have something booked or coming up or even on the horizon, no talking, it's just kind of like, well, this was fun. This was great. I guess this is it now. I'll see you later. And then, I've been really blessed that hasn't been an issue for me since the first couple years out, that I've pretty much never really struggled to find a job. But I know plenty of people that have, and plenty of people that moved away and started something new. So I'm just, lucky that wasn't me.
Is it luck?
I think it's a little bit of luck. I think that there are, the crazy part about the entertainment industry is that it is a lot about who you know and being at the right time at the right place. I've had several opportunities that I didn't get to do for different reasons, and I think my career would look a lot different if those had panned out. What that is, I don't know, but I do think that a lot of it is right time, right place, and then there's certainly a lot of, talent, expertise, and like hard work and work ethic that you have to put into. But sometimes the people that are the most talented in the entertainment industry, at least, don't always get to be the ones that find success.
Why do you think that is? Because, me coming from the world of, I'm in a lot of worlds. I think we define ourselves too linear at times.
Yeah.
Right? So, I'm in the business world, but it's not my entire makeup of who I am. Like, there's a person that's in the business world. There's a person that's in the entertainment world.
Yeah.
Those similar things apply here.
Sure.
Right? It's, I think I'm a guy who thinks that almost anything's possible for almost everyone.
Mm-hmm.
There's all these limitations. I'm not going to play in the NBA.
Right.
It's just not going to happen, right?
Yeah.
So there's certain limitations that we have. But beyond those few limitations on the periphery, we all can almost do most things we put our mind to.
Sure.
Right? And so that's a realization with how social media and AI, they're bringing us closer together all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And things are becoming more apparent and evident. The old rule about the 80-20 rule. We've been reading books about that in business forever. I don't know why. I just know it happens so often.
Right.
Does that happen in entertainment as well? The top actors get the jobs. The top producers get the jobs.
No.
No?
I think that, I think they kind of become that way in a way because they are the ones that get the jobs. But I think it's the interesting part of it is it's not always the best people that get the job. It's the, like I was saying a moment ago, it's the people that were there and stuck through it. And I think that sometimes everyone's got their own walk, everyone's got their own journey. And so sometimes you might face a little adversity, and depending on what you're going through, that may be kind of the end of that route. And you need to go for a paycheck. I think what we've conditioned ourselves to as a society, which is like really weird that I'm talking about it like this, but is that we're all paycheck focused. We're all making a living. We all want, that American dream, that house with the 2.5 kids and the picket fence. And I think that that is a major brain block for people.
Why do you think that is?
I think it's because that's just what you're taught, and you're taught that that's what you have to have. And I mean, I know, for me, I am doing accounting right now in television, and I went to film school at NKU, so like I don't know math. I took math for the liberal arts. I can use my hands and toes, and that's like the extent of my math knowledge.
You can count to 20.
Yeah, and that's about on my hands. Outside of that, I need a calculator, and thank God we have calculators. And so, part of that is I'm not doing what I set out to do, but that's not a negative. Because this is a step in the right process, this is a stepping stone. But I think that some people get so like, oh, I have to do this, I have to do X, Y, and Z. And they look at, every time I come home, all of my friends are married, they have kids, they have a house. Sometimes some of them have nice houses, some of them have okay houses. I live in an apartment, and I pay way more than any of them pay in their mortgage for my apartment. And that's just the reality of living in Los Angeles, and that's totally fine. And I have, that's what I want to do, so I deal with it. Mm-hmm. But I think that people kind of get that comparison syndrome of just comparing ourselves to one another, that sometimes if it's not happening as quickly as possible, they give up. Or they're like, I could go do, my friends and I kind of talk about the jobs that we do aren't jobs that aren't relatable in other professions and other careers. Like we could go do a similar job, then not in entertainment, and probably make a lot more money and get to live with our families and, have all of that American dream part of it. But there's that part inside that's like, that's not what's going to fulfill me. That I'm not going to be happy. Yes, I'm going to have those things that I think are benchmarks that I want and need, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to enjoy what I'm doing every day.
Isn't that the more important word, joy versus happy, though?
100%.
There's a big debate over this right now.
Okay.
Because I know that, like, I look back on my own life and so many people around me, I don't know anyone, no matter the amount of money or job they have or experience, I don't know anyone that's had the perfect life.
Right.
Right? And so because of that, if you don't have the perfect life, there's not happiness at every turn.
Yeah.
Right? And if we're chasing that, that's fleeting at every moment because life's tough. And all these moments that we don't want tough things to happen, but I think it's called life. People that we love and care about are going to pass away. Mm-hmm. Animals that some people are different, their animals are their family. Yeah. Right? They're going to lose them. Sickness and bad health comes and arrives at people's lives. And so if we're just chasing happiness, it's going to be tough to get through the tough moments. And so maybe we can find more joy in all the moments.
Yeah.
Right? And so I think this, even though one of my favorite books is like The Pursuit of Happiness, right, that Will Smith was in back in the day, and I think it's just that story of overcoming odds and anyone can do anything. I think if we're always chasing that, we're going to miss a lot of moments.
Yeah.
Right? It's really challenging. And so I tend to agree. I started out before we were recording. I was like, hey, we can disagree on things. That's like the spice of life. Because I think you brought up friends when you come back home. Home, is it Northern Kentucky or Louisville?
Northern Kentucky.
Okay. You were born in Louisville.
Yeah.
Okay. I think the spice of life is having those core people that you just have such a good relationship with. You just talk open and honestly and just sit down and just share.
Yeah.
Right? You're not guarded. You're not worried about the outside world. We probably, even if we're honest in those moments, we probably say things that we can't say in the outside world.
Yeah.
Right? But if those relationships are that important to us and we find true value in those, to your point, it's okay that we're different.
Yeah.
But the subject that I do like going deep on is, you touched on it a little bit, and I'm like, is there some contradiction here about, hey, as long as you don't quit, that was good. That's really good. I'm like, okay, that's a good trait that we all should share. Because if you're in L.A. spending $3,500 a month for rent or something, I don't know what the number is, but it's expensive. Right?
Yeah.
And you could buy a home back here for $2,500. That's just the life you're choosing to live.
Right.
Right? And if that's the life you're choosing to live, great. I think this world of us 340 million people or whatever it is, we're made up and it's special because there's a lot of people choosing to do a lot of different things.
Yeah.
And it's good that we all do the same thing. That'd be a terrible world. But there are realities of this economic system we live in.
Yeah.
Right? We'd probably have some good debate. Me being in business, right? You just being on the strike.
Yeah.
We'd have some good debate about that.
Yeah.
I'd push back on it and unions, and you'd push back on me and say, hey, they're important. But where's the spice of life to truly achieving joy and some happiness if you're caught into this place that it isn't the traditional American dream?
I think that's a different answer for everyone.
Okay.
I think that, there are people that can do a lot with very little, and there are people that need a lot to feel that joy. And I think that that's like an individualistic journey that you have to find out one way or another. And I think that's why people kind of, are dead set on doing this one thing and then find themselves in a completely different avenue, is because what they thought would bring them joy, what they thought was what they wanted to do, when they get there, they either realize it's not what they wanted to do, it's not going to be anywhere close to, in their mind, an achievable time frame to get to that point. And then they see, though, that they can sidestep into this other thing and get pretty close. And then is that pretty close going to be okay for me? And if it is, then I think a lot of times they go do it. And if it's not, then they have to kind of reconcile with that and figure out what to do, and hopefully not be miserable their entire lives, and hopefully eventually be able to find that joy.
Yeah.
And I think that that's kind of a big...
That's tough to figure out, isn't it?
It is. And I think when you're in the arts and the creative space, it's an extremely daunting task that you really have to want it pretty bad in order to do it, because you're going to get knocked down. And I mean, everyone gets knocked down, but you're going to get knocked down hard. And like I said, if you're in LA, if you're in New York, if you're in Chicago or even Atlanta, like, those places aren't cheap to live in. And you don't start out making great money. I think, my first year in LA, I made like $12,000, $13,000, which
that much.
And to think that like now to make that kind of money, I don't know how I would be here today. Like, I don't know that would afford me even what I was able to afford back then.
But isn't it funny? We're resilient.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I don't know why this human form's resilient, but we are.
Yeah.
And so when you said, hey, I don't know how I made it, I think that here's the challenge. You know how I said in the beginning, don't be humble.
Yeah.
Right? I think here's the challenge. Me personally, I'm just trying to live the best life I can. I think if I take care of myself first, then I can take care of others. It's not selfishly. It's just I need to make sure that I crush this thing, whatever I choose to do, so I can positively impact others. And I'm sitting here, and you're like, man, I made $12,000 or $13,000. That feels daunting to think about now.
Yeah.
But in the moment, what was your mindset?
It was incremental progress. So I think at that time, I was starting to get on shows to be a production assistant on set. And I was actually getting paid for every day that I was there, which starting out was not the case. And then not only from just getting paid every day, then it went from getting paid like an actual hourly rate and not just like, here's some money, congratulations. And so I think getting that incremental progress and kind of seeing that like it's not going to go fast, but I can see it starting to happen. And I think that for me, that hunger stayed. And that as terrible as some of those jobs were, as many hours as I worked on some of those jobs for the very little money that I was paid, all I could think about in the time, and I still do it now, even though I make more money and work less hours, is I'm getting to do what I wanted to do. Like I'm looking around and I'm seeing a television show or a film be made. And I think when I was younger, that was not something that I thought was possible, that I could do from Northern Kentucky. And so to be able to do it in a city like Los Angeles and put food on the table, have a roof over my head, and like certainly none of it was glamorous. I lived in a shoebox for the first year. It was like that hunger stayed alive for me.
So what do you see? There's some silver lining here. And I don't know if this necessarily lines up with what Tim would want to admit. I think you're sitting here talking about this today because you did keep going. And I know you give yourself credit for that in the quiet moments around your friends.
Yeah.
But see, that's a message that the world does need to hear.
Yeah.
Because, there's some luck. Yeah, we all need some.
Mm-hmm.
But when luck shows up, if you haven't worked hard,
yeah,
if you're not prepared, if you're not capable, if you hadn't developed the skills to become a good production assistant, if you hadn't done those things and made those sacrifices, you wouldn't have been chosen,
right,
afforded the opportunity, become the person that was necessary that someone looked at and said, I'll take Tim.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And see that message, that person becomes the Tim that you were because you kept going.
Yeah, and I think that, and here's my plug for schooling, because I think one of the big things that we all in the industry kind of lament eventually, once you get to where like my friends and I are at this point in our careers, where we're like, I didn't need to go to school. I wasted, quote unquote, however much money on
a lot less back then.
Yeah, a lot less back then. At whatever university you went to. I went to NKU. And I didn't need to do that because no one asked when I interview for a job where I went to school, what my GPA was, what classes I took.
Which is true.
Which is true, and
However,
that may be true for probably a lot of
it is becoming
businesses.
now. Yeah. Didn't used to be.
But what I can say is 18-year-old Tim could not do what 22-year-old Tim did, because 18-year-old Tim didn't know how to survive.
Here's my question on that.
Yeah.
Do you have to pay money and go to university to become that, though? Because
No.
Here's my pushback, because I did it very different.
Yeah.
I went to NKU for a year, then went out and traveled working, and then came back and went back to morning classes. I want to finish my degree.
Right.
But I spent 5 years working.
And I think that that's great, because I do think that one of the things, especially in our industry is not an academic industry. It's a trade. Grip and electrics are basically your electricians and your construction work, and we have a construction department,
Trades.
but like our trade jobs.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't need an education to go there. Mm-hmm. You don't need an education to be a producer or an accountant, because really I'm a bookkeeper.
Yeah, you said you don't even know math.
Yeah, I don't really know math.
And now you're a production accountant.
Yeah.
Right?
So it's like I just know how to add numbers and basically read an invoice that says you owe this much money, and I know how to ask questions if that invoice doesn't match what we thought we were going to spend.
Yeah.
And then after that, it's just like data entry.
However,
but I think what helped me with education was it gave me a breeding ground to fail, and to fail hard that no one saw in the bubble of a university. And so I was afforded, and this was, again, because I chose this, I sought it out, opportunities to, I hosted a television show that was on NKU's cable access station. I worked with the radio station when they would have guests come in running cameras to like musicians that would do like in-studio concerts. I'd run cameras with that. I'd, helped create like a TV show on like the like public Northern Kentucky public access group. And so it was like all of those things were things that my peers at school didn't necessarily do, or maybe they helped, but just kind of was like doing it for fun. Whereas I was doing it because I wanted to learn everything I could about the process before I had to actually do it. And so I was able to kind of, make a lot of mistakes and shoot a lot of things that were not beautiful. And, now I don't really do any of the labor of shooting or editing or anything like that, but I know how to do most of that. And that's something that when you get into real life, you don't necessarily always have that opportunity. So I know I'll never be an editor. I know I'll never be a camera operator. But I know the basics. So when it comes time to produce, which is ultimately what I want to do, I know the very basics of that job, and I'll never tell them I know what they do or how they do it. But I know the basics enough to know when someone is pulling my leg, when someone's trying to get something that I don't want. But also, I know enough to know their language, to speak to them. And that was something that one of my theater professors actually taught me, was learn enough to speak their language. You don't have to know everything. I don't have to know about all the lights and, what the power they need and what this does and that does and the kelvins and all of that. But if I know enough to know a little bit of their lingo and I can talk their lingo, then we can talk it out. And then they can reason with me why they need what they need. And it's not just like, oh, I need like a 10K and a 20K and an HMI and this, that, and the other. And then I just go, okay, sure. And then get the bill, and it's like thousands of dollars more than I had.
So here's the question about education. Because I think my opinion is, and what I'm seeing in the world, education is evolving how that's happening. And I don't necessarily believe that it needs to happen in the bubble and the vacuum that we used to call schools and universities, because now the things that you just talked about, you can go to YouTube,
sure,
and learn any of that stuff, and it doesn't take 16 weeks to do it.
Yeah.
And so then the question is, what I really believed you've learned from 18 to 22, if it was that traditional time frame, I believed you learned how to deal with people.
Yeah.
Because the stuff you're talking about, then the other pushback to traditional education is that whether it should be free or it shouldn't, there's nothing in this world free. Someone's paying for it.
Right.
Right. We're taking resources. That's not even the debate. I'm not opposed to it, but, there's a lot of conversation that has to happen around what's that system look like.
Mm-hmm.
But in my day job, even though we're sitting here during the day, the thing I do to put food on my table and roof over my head, it's becoming more media all the time, but it was in real estate. And I look around, and the same things that you're talking about basically what you did in the business world, you got to know your product.
Yeah.
That's what you did, right? You got to know what you're doing, what you're selling. But what I find so many people that are selling real estate with me now, it's not what they went to school for.
Right.
Right? And so you put your head down and stayed in this, I don't even call it a bubble because it's big, but you stayed in this area. So the things that you did learn from 18 to 22, you've been able to expand on them and go deep, and you're still in the arena.
Yeah.
I don't think many of us at 18, 19, 20, 21, and 22, our full frontal lobes, I say, aren't even developed until we're 25.
Yeah.
I don't think the majority of humans know what they want the rest of their professional life to be.
Yeah, and that's
Right?
always been a struggle for me to wrap my head around that, because I've known it's fluctuated a little bit, but basically since high school, what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
I found what I love doing, and I was like, I want to do that. And then knowing that it's a career path,
Yes.
as hard as it is, I said, well, I want to do that. So
Yeah,
I
kudos.
have to do what I want to do.
Yeah, kudos to you.
Yeah, thank you.
And so I think that that clarity didn't show up for me and a lot of other people.
Yeah.
Some people know. Like a lot of times it's family based.
Mm-hmm.
If someone was a physician, if someone was an attorney, if someone was an engineer. And I don't think that's necessarily great either.
Yeah.
It's like, is this the thing I did? This is what you're going to do. But a lot of those things are influenced as we're growing up. But so many people don't have that direction.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that's the conversation that we're not having around the expense of education. Because doctors don't have a problem paying for it.
Yeah. And I think with that, it certainly is like if you don't know what you're doing,
Yeah.
don't go to college.
Yeah, see, that's the tough conversation.
And I think that that's what
That's what college used to be.
that's what college used to be. And I think that that's what our parents, my age parents, thought
Yeah.
and told and did. And it was like, you have to get into college. You
Came from a good place.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
But I think that ultimately wasted a lot of people's potential to find out what they wanted and wasted a lot of money that either the parents paid or the students had to take out in debt.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of where we are now, as it's like we as a society, while I think college did great for me,
Yeah.
I think there are also film schools that are more trade schools than universities that cost a lot more money that you can kind of do that training in.
Yeah.
And then also, if you're driven, there's plenty of resources. The books that I used in school are available to anyone to purchase. And, you can kind of, do YouTube University or whatever.
But you got to take the initiative.
But you have to take the initiative, and that's very hard,
Yeah.
especially if you don't know what you want to do.
Why is taking the initiative hard?
'Cause
Just in general.
it's work, and you don't get paid for it.
But that's where we learn.
Yeah,
Because
But-
no one's going to pay us to learn usually.
right. And I think that what we've been conditioned to do is to find what pays us and then chase after the dollar. So
And
many
get caught
people
in a trap.
are convinced that they have to make X amount of dollars to be happy.
Oh, Instagram.
Yeah. I make those X amount of dollars, I guess, to be happy in Kentucky. Those dollars do not translate into Los Angeles.
Yeah. But you're making someone to do the thing out there.
Yes.
Not saying it's a great life. I'm not saying that.
No, I mean, I have
Right?
a great life.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I don't.
Yeah. Just doesn't afford you the same material things.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is okay.
Which is
Who
fine.
gives a shit about the Rolls Royce?
Yeah.
I mean, really. Yeah,
That's true. I'm not a car guy. Like, I mean, I like cars and I appreciate them, but I think if you're spending over $100,000 for a car, me personally, you do what you want. I think there's a lot of money that could be spent elsewhere.
Feels like a waste.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could go. Now, if you have.
I'm close, so I'll call you when I have it.
Yeah, if you have millions of dollars and that's like a drop in the bucket, go ahead. Get
Yeah.
that Rolls Royce.
Do
Do
your
whatever
thing.
you want. But,
It's not going to make you happier.
Yeah, but for me, it's like that's an expensive. I even think like even luxury cars.
Yell at me.
You have to like pay the money for the luxury car, which if you like it, that's great.
Keep coming at me. Come on.
But they're just so expensive
Oh,
to upkeep.
Oh, the whole thing's stupid. Here's
Yeah.
the thing. Taxes cost more every year.
Yeah,
The insurance costs more.
yeah,
You have to put premium gas in it.
yeah,
When you take it to the dealership, that costs way more.
yeah.
I said to someone the other day, I was selling them a little Hyundai SUV, and that my significant other that she had for 10 years paid off,
Yeah.
and I sold it to him. And I said, "Isn't it funny? Parked next to my luxury car, but I grew up humble and poor,
Yeah.
and so maybe I appreciate it a little bit."
Yeah.
Right.
And I think that that's great.
Yeah.
I just think that like, and I think that like they make reasonable luxury cars.
Mine's borderline unreasonable.
But I think, and even then, it's like if you've got the money, you
Then
can
do it.
afford it.
Yeah.
And that's going to bring you joy.
A little bit.
Absolutely do it.
Yeah. My heated seats, Tim.
Oh, I love my heated seats.
My ventilated seats.
I do wish I had ventilated seats. That was the one thing. I drive a Bronco Sport.
Oh,
so
yeah.
to talk about.
So that's nice.
Yeah, it's a nice car.
That's
and
not cheap.
And it's not cheap. And I do off-roading, which
See?
is also not cheap to like make
Maintain.
it off-road.
Yeah.
Roadable.
We came with new words today.
Yeah.
Off-roadable.
And so like I have my own
Yeah.
things that I
Your own
spend
luxuries.
way too much money on that probably
Yeah.
someone else would be like, yeah, that
You're awful
Hyundai's gonna do
judgmental.
fine.
Yeah. So what I did tell him was, I said, this is a good friend. Sold it
Yeah.
to, gave him a little bit of a deal. I said, hey, isn't it fascinating that this Hyundai is going to get you to the same place that this car I'm driving will? And the person I was talking to also has one of those luxury cars, but they bought this just to drive back and forth to work. So it hasn't changed them. But I said, isn't it fascinating? And we always give the yeah buts.
Mm-hmm.
It's fascinating. It's great. So I bet you have some of the what do we call the luxurious apparel? I bet you have some of that. What's the term?
Yeah, I mean, I have some Calvin Klein pieces.
Mm-hmm.
Most of them I did buy from Ross, or at the outlets, so they were on sale.
So does it make the Mercedes okay if I bought it from a Chevy dealership?
I mean, it makes the Mercedes okay if you want to drive it. If you want to drive it, and I just think that, like, for me, it's not that someone that can afford it and take care of it and do all that stuff. It's not that. I think it's the people that
the strapped
are cash strapped, or the people that feel like that is what is going to make them
here's when
happy or rich. Or
here's what a luxury car. Here's when it's okay to drive. When you pull up next to the shitty car that you used to drive on your way up, and you don't feel like you're better than them.
Yeah,
that's when driving the luxury car is okay.
I think if you
Just
go
for
into
you.
it, and it's just for you, and it
Yes.
brings you joy, that's great. But if it's a status symbol for you,
Which a bunch it is.
that's when I think it's weird. I mean, I lived in an apartment. I just moved away from an apartment, and there were like Maseratis and G-Wagons. And like these apartments were expensive, but they're still apartments. And you have $100,000 cars in the parking lot, and it's like, if you didn't have that car,
What could you have?
you
What could
might
be?
be able to afford a condo or
Yeah.
a house. And
Or-
if that's not what you want. That I guess that's
Whatever,
fine.
right?
Yeah.
See, that's the big debate.
Yeah.
Because I think the conversation we'd have, and it's like, well, how do you feel when you're wearing your Calvin Klein?
Yeah,
I don't know. It's weird, isn't it?
it is.
There's contradictions all over this world. I find myself consistently being the guy who I will create a conversation and debate just to be the anarchist about everything,
Yeah,
right? And I'm like, guys, whatever your beliefs are, there's contradictions in your life.
100%.
What do we do with that?
Whatever you want to do with it. I think that
There's the PC
it's
answer.
yeah. Well, I think it's kind of like the contradictions are so prevalent that it's kind of like, I think that this is where like debate gets lost, and context about everything. So it's like, yes, I may say that a Maserati is too expensive of a car to drive around because, especially in Los Angeles, if someone hit you, probably 50-50 chance on whether they have insurance, and probably 50-50 chance on whether they run. And so
I think that's good odds for LA.
yeah, that probably is. It's probably worse than that. But then it's like, well, now I'm out that money. And so at least where I am in my current financial situation, that's not viable. But maybe it will be one day, and maybe I'll change my mind. But I think that what the big thing that we lack sometimes is the ability to change our mind and it be okay. To learn something new and be okay with the fact that I felt this way about this thing, but now, a year later, 2 years later, I feel very different.
Yeah, that's like threatening to most people.
Yeah.
Right? Like that, I guess it depends on how important the thing is.
Yeah.
Right? Because if it goes back to like the fundamental principles of people's lives, tell them to change that. It's like, well, I have to change everything. I have to change the people I hang out with. I have to change my group. I have to change the things I read. I have to change. It's like, well, okay. What I push back and go back to is like, do you want a different life?
Yeah.
Do you want a different life? Do you want a better life? Are you trying to evolve to something new? Well, if that's the case, you're going to have to change, whatever that is. So back to this 10 or 11 years of this grind that you've been, I'd call it a grind. You
Yeah.
can change it.
No, it was a grind.
Right?
For sure.
Why is that riding that roller coaster that you were talking about in the beginning, that you and your boss? And I want to hear this thing too about, explain to us about, after we dig into the thing I'm going to talk about the roller coaster, about that you are part of a union.
Mm-hmm.
Is it the Actors Guild or is it the Writers Guild?
I'm actually in IATSE, which is the behind the scenes guild. It stands for the International
Better get this right.
Theatrical. I don't know.
It's a union to
Yeah, it's
represent
the union,
d-
the International Alliance of like stage and theatrical.
Okay. So, and then you said you have a boss,
Yeah,
but I don't know if you're an employee.
I am.
You are.
So the
Okay.
big thing, and this is a big, when I was coming up, it was kind of where the change started. So to get very technical,
Let's go.
per the federal labor laws that we are all governed by, being an employee is when the employer controls where you go, when you show up, and tells you what to do. Then there's independent contracting, where you get to decide when you show up, you get to decide when you work, and you get to decide how you work.
But you're signing agreements that says you're going to do certain
Yeah,
things.
you're going to build a house.
Yeah.
That's like independent contracting is, I think, a lot in construction, especially in building. So when I started out, we would be considered independent contractors, which was a gray area in the labor law that no one really fought, because I don't think the people that were independent contractors were kind of small potatoes. So you would get paid, basically I would get paid a sum of money a day, and it didn't matter how many hours I worked. I was only making this much money. But I was still being told where to go, what to do, and how to do it. So I was technically supposed to be classified as an employee.
You just weren't.
But I wasn't. So I was an independent contractor. That has since changed. The California Labor Commission has really cracked down on that and released new guidelines that spell it out kind of clear as day. This is an independent contractor. This is an employee. And basically, like, if you work in the film industry, you are an employee for the most part. If you work in, like, on set, for the most part. There are exceptions, of course, and nuance, but for the most part, you're an employee. So I am treated like I'm a freelance employee. So I can go work on any show that I want and stay on that show for the entirety of it, or leave, or be fired, because I'm also an at-will employee. So they can fire me at any time for any reason. So yeah, I'm an employee. It's a long-winded answer for that.
So what's weird is that you can stay as long as you want, but
Yeah.
then so your employer,
Yeah.
what's their relationships with these jobs?
So most of the time which is more technicalities and more weirdness about the industry, is our employer is of record, which is like if we go get unemployment insurance, this is the employer we say we work for, is the payroll company that processes our payroll, not the studio that we're actually working for.
So your company and you seem like an independent contractor to the studio,
Right.
but you're an employee on paper because the California labor laws and people probably, they advocated for it.
Yeah.
Right? So, okay. Yeah, this is fascinating.
So I work predominantly for HBO
Okay.
at this point in my career, but I am paid through a payroll service company, and that is who we have as our employer of record, but HBO is the one funding the entire project.
Okay. Does your company, employer of record, do they make a profit?
Yeah,
They do.
because how they do it is that even though we're in the employer of record, we are not employees of that company. It's a weird, like, pass-through company, essentially.
Yeah.
So what they do is we use their payroll services.
You can get insurance and all these things.
Yeah, and they charge a service fee per check, and then if it's a large dollar amount, so the actors, it's a larger percentage, and so they charge a percentage of the payroll, and that is their
This
profit.
sounds like a pawn shop cash and go deal to
Yeah. It's a weird system that
Yeah.
I don't know when it was set up, but basically, yeah. And then I'm on the accounts payable side, so we use their software to run all of our payments through on the show level.
Okay.
But all of it is funded by
HBO.
HBO.
So does your pay change?
Yes.
Okay.
My pay. So I'm in the union, but only certain studios recognize my position as an assistant accountant as a union position. So the large studios, Warner Brothers, Paramount, CBS, ABC, Disney, and NBC Universal, they all are in a group called the AMPTP, which is like the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers.
They recognize unions.
They recognize unions. They do not recognize me as an accountant in a union. And to stave that off, they gave accountants what they call non-affiliate status. So we're not affiliated with the union, but we get our health care and pension that the union side gets. We get that as non-affiliate accountants.
Why do they make you non-affiliated? What's the reasoning behind it? I know it's going to come back to money, but what's the reasoning behind it?
The reasoning is actually not it's not our money, how much we make, because we make actually a lot less money compared to our other counterparts in the industry. It's control. And they feel that accountants, because we are working with the money and we're working with the budgeting, that we are too close to the studio to be represented by a union.
It's a fair argument.
It is.
Yeah.
Until you realize who else is represented in the union, because supposedly managers are not supposed to be unionized.
Well, managers make the rules.
Right. However, all of the managers in the other departments are recognized in the union. So the head electrician who manages the electric department is in the union. The construction coordinator who manages the construction department is in the union. The production manager who manages the entire production he's technically in a guild, but it's virtually the same thing, where they negotiate a contract for representation and they get all the benefits associated with that. As an accountant, I have to negotiate for my own money.
If you're great, that's good.
If you're great, that's good. However, because I get to negotiate, the company can tell me, well, this is the most we pay. Take it or leave it.
And you don't like that.
And I can't get higher than that.
Why not?
Because they won't pay it. They get to set these arbitrary standards of pay that are lower than our unionized counterparts that get to negotiate their salaries as part of a union negotiation contract. They get what they call a scale rate. So they get to decide this is how much a grip or an electrician make.
Yeah. If you take the job, it's like working for a UPS union. It's like working for anybody who's in a union. Those wages are set.
Right.
And you already see whether it's a teacher's union, right? You know what you're going to make.
Right.
Here's what I love about that. I don't like that.
Okay.
For me personally.
Yeah.
Because I want to be great. And when I'm better than others, I don't want to be paid the same. If I actually let's say I choose to live my life differently.
Yeah.
Let's say I don't have a family. And instead of that family time, I use it for professional development.
Yeah.
I use it for investing in myself. Let's say that I'm just someone who really is passionate about work and I just want to work more, even if I have a family. By default, what I've learned in life, the person who traditionally puts in more time, you've done this. It's called a compound effect. You become not a better person, but most of the time you become higher qualified, more skilled just because of the time. If there's someone that's willing to sacrifice that, which I would make an argument is going to benefit the film, it's going to benefit coworkers, that person we just call it money, they should be compensated better.
And generally they are.
Okay.
So the department heads, which is if you're going to be that great of a person, more than likely you're going to become a department head.
Okay.
You're going to become
a manager,
the key grip, the key electrician, the director of photography, whatever that may be. All of those positions have a scale, but you can be paid over scale.
How's that happen?
Negotiation.
I'm going to leave and go work somewhere else. And if you become in high demand enough.
And the awards.
Yep.
So there are they call them Creative Emmy Awards in television. And then there's also the Oscars for best director of photography, like best.
The stuff that runs across the screen.
Right. The
that
stuff
they don't
that's
get to
at the
speak.
very end that it's, best costume design. All of those people are the designers of the show. And so if you get nominated or if you win, you're obviously comparatively better. So therefore, you're able to negotiate more. But also, those positions in more recent years have started getting agents. And so now an agent can negotiate for them.
Yeah.
So you still can make more money than what the scale rate is. I, for instance, in HBO's contract, we actually have scale rates for my position. They are very low because the way that HBO and IATSE negotiate is different than how HBO or IATSE and the AMPTP, the Warner Brothers, the NBC Universals, how they negotiate. When they negotiate, our union gets to go to the table and make a case for ourselves.
I'm not opposed to that.
With HBO, the national union negotiates with HBO directly. So they're going to just do big picture items. They're not looking at the accountants, even though this is the only contract outside of low budget movies. This is the only major contract we're in on the West Coast. On the East Coast, they have different contracts, and they actually just won the right to negotiate with Netflix. So now in New York and in New Jersey, the accountants will be recognized at Netflix, which was the first time that that's ever happened.
Yeah. See, Netflix isn't all bad then.
Well, we had to basically go to the National Labor Relations
for it.
Board
Yeah.
and stage what they call a card count. So basically, all the people that work for Netflix as an accountant had to sign a card that said, we want to be represented by the union. And then they were going to take it to the National Labor Relations Board and force an election.
So then they negotiated with you because
So then, Netflix was like, never mind, we'll just do it.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to do now
For the accountants.
for the accountants all over the country.
So what can we learn from this? I like the conversation, but what do we take from this?
I think what we take from this is that you have to fight for yourself because no one's going to fight for you.
What's that fight look like?
I think it depends. For us, that fight is accountants have been historically segued away from union representation because we were getting the benefits without having to join the union, which for a lot of people sounds like a great option. However, our rates have stagnated because there is no public record of what people make. When you're in the union, you at least have the scale, and that's blasted everywhere. Every union has a copy of it. Everyone knows. You can go to your union and say, they're not paying me this scale rate. When you're not an affiliate, there's no one to argue that. And they can sit across the table and say, you're the highest paid accountant in the industry, and you have no way to dispute that until you find someone else making more. And then they might make a reasoning. I had this happen to me where there was a reasoning of, oh, well, they came over and did this and they were at that rate. And so we just kind of had to give them that because they actually took a pay cut to come to us. I have no way to verify that. I just know that that person's making more than me. But I'm always employed.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm clearly good enough to do the job.
Mm-hmm.
On some shows that are bigger than others that maybe this other person's working on. Yet they're making substantially more money than I am.
What about the people that are making the same as you that just aren't doing as good of a job? And that don't care to do as good of a job, because I guarantee you see them.
Sure.
What about that?
I think that's the cost of doing business. And I think that eventually that light is shown and there will be someone, hopefully, that comes up. Hopefully I can be that catalyst to train someone up to be as good or better than me. And they can come in and take that spot. Because eventually, that's going to show. It always does.
Mm-hmm. Always does. But the question is that, and I'm not anti-union at all.
Yeah.
But it just takes a lot longer for those things to happen in that environment.
Sure. But I think that that's where you have to negotiate that ability. Because the great thing about us is we're show to show. So unlike at, let's say, a Ford factory plant or like a general like accepted union contract or position where someone, starts out day one and they get really good or whatever. We're only show to show. So like that bad person, it's going to show that they're bad.
They're passed on though.
Yeah.
Show to show to show.
Sometimes they are and sometimes they aren't. Because there is the
think
devil
the
you do is better than the devil you don't.
Yeah, you think the reputation carries
Right.
with them.
But I would say that there are times, and I've seen this, I've worked with people that I don't see anymore. And I don't know what they're doing. But I also know that I've passed some of them up.
Yeah. Well, that's what happens. When someone that cares about doing, I can tell sitting here with you for the time that we've sat, I can tell that you care about doing a good job. And see, that's the thing that's what happens with the 80-20 rule from back in the day.
Yeah.
Right? It's not that it's 20% of the people do 80% of the business. That's probably the reason why, I'm assuming, I don't know, you said that there's a lot of talent that isn't seen. Yeah, but I remember when, I don't know anything about these people. You probably know the insider if they're a good person or not. But I remember Leonardo DiCaprio in Gilbert Grape or whatever the movie was.
Yeah.
That kid was an incredible actor.
Mm-hmm.
And he could be a mean, terrible human. I don't know. I just know that when I consistently see that person show up on screen, they're a really good actor.
And there's nothing, and I'm not taking that away from the Leonardo DiCaprios, the George Clooney's, the Sandra Bullocks, the Julia Roberts,
right.
Meryl Streep, all of them, fantastic actors.
Yeah.
And there are some really great young actors coming up. But what I say when not everyone gets to do that is because those people are great, but they may get cast in roles because they're bankable that maybe they're not great for. Mm-hmm. Or there could be someone better, but that someone better isn't a name that's going to take people to the theater. And that's kind of where the business that I don't think normal people realize is that while entertainment is creative and it's where all the artists are, not all of the artists, but where artists are, it's still a business. And now all of the studios are corporations. So they have shareholders.
This is the world, man, now. And so
Right.
I'm not saying I love it.
No, I get it.
This is the world now.
And
I kind of hate it. But
that's kind of the problem is like there are talented people that you'll never see because they never got the chance or will never get the chance to break in. And so they're not bankable.
It's been that way in music forever.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? You go to Nashville, and you can go in those bars and hear incredibly talented people.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I don't know if they didn't meet the right person. I don't know if the right person wasn't in there that night when they heard him sing that song that way. I don't know, but I do hear these stories of an Alan Jackson and a Garth Brooks where you hear, because they've had their specials made about them.
Yeah.
You hear they went to Nashville and failed and didn't get the thing and went back home.
Yeah.
And then they went again. They stuck with it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think this might be the silver lining that you spoke about too. You kept going.
Yeah.
Through all the hard times, and you didn't quit.
Yeah.
And when I watch those specials about people's lives, whether it's in your form of entertainment, whether it's in music or business, everyone who has achieved, let's set the money aside, but they've achieved stardom or they've achieved a high level of accomplishment. It could be that you received a national or worldwide award. That person's story, what we end up finding, it's similar to everyone else's that's achieved big things.
Yeah.
There was a massive struggle. There's many times where they got beat down. There's many times where the average person that we see, even maybe the old Tim or the old Mark, wouldn't have gotten back up. Mm-hmm. But those are just the people that got back up. That's why they're there.
Yeah.
And that's what I think, unfortunately. So I'm pushing back a lot more and more. I don't have any kids, so I'm 44. I'm telling this generation between like 40 and 60-year-olds that now they're raising kids, they're teenagers, but now they're in their 20s. I'm like, hey, you all, it's admirable what you've done. I've heard this from you time and time again. What you've said is you just want your kids to have a better life than you.
Yep.
And
that's how my dad was.
Right?
Yeah.
And you know what? Also, what better to them.
He's not dead. That's
but here's what
tense.
Right, yeah. So what it means is that it's not just better. They do want it to be easier.
Yeah.
Because we reflect on our struggle, and it's like, man, that was hard. Those dark days, those dark moments. There's some people that don't get through that.
Yeah.
And so, but I'm like, hey, so it's admirable what you were trying to do. But what you're missing is the person that's become the you that's raising these kids, most likely you're you because of the struggle.
Yeah.
Because of the adversity.
Yeah.
And then you've learned to do life better. You're removing that from them. And because you're removing it from them, here's what's going to happen. You're delaying the adversity they're going to face in life, and they're not going to be prepared. And so what I would say to everyone, I don't care if they're coming up or they're older than us, it's like there's a path and a sequence to this. Commit to something, you did.
Yeah.
You committed to an industry. You committed to being a part of this thing. It looks a little different, but you kept going. If you would have been an asshole, wouldn't have worked out. If you wouldn't have continued to press forward on your professional development, probably wouldn't have worked out, right? If you wouldn't have gone out here into the world and treated people well, probably wouldn't have worked out. So the story of this is, hey, when it gets hard, keep going.
Yeah, I think it's the don't be afraid to fail. And I think that everyone means well because they don't want their kids to fail. They don't want to see their kids fall down, and I get that. But if they don't fail, they'll never figure out what works because they're going to be afraid to try. And I think that, that was, like I said, with my NKU days, that was my failure ground. Not that I necessarily failed, but that was where I felt like I had a trampoline that when I fell onto a trampoline so I could get back up.
What made you that kid, though, and I'll say 18 as a kid.
Yeah.
What made you that kid? Because the story you told me about all the things you did.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. That's not normal.
No.
Okay. So you actually taking action in that environment was great for you. But those kids not taking action, just going to class, showing up and just making sure they get a high enough grade just to get the degree. And then life's going to start then. No, your life started in the midst of it.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's what was special for you. It's like, hey, it wasn't just a 4-year degree. It's the approach you took within your degree.
Yeah. I think a lot of that is ego. I think I had a lot of people telling me I couldn't do it, that I wouldn't do it, that I was in Kentucky, and I would never be able to do it. And, and this, that, and the other. I'm not this, I'm not that. Or you are this, you are that. And for me, it was the ego of, I want to prove them wrong. So to me, it was the drive to prove people wrong. Because I liked doing what I liked doing. I didn't like math. I didn't necessarily like, the things, my mom's a pharmacist. My dad is, I call him a real accountant because he actually went to accounting school and actually knows how to do accounting and math. Where
He's like,
I don't.
Tim, that's not right.
Yeah. He is amazed every day that I have the job that I have. And I was like, well, when you went to school, did you think that you could be a television accountant? No. You went to school because you were going to go to a financial institution.
And be an accountant.
And be an accountant.
Yeah. And do debits and credits all day.
Exactly. So that's why I am where I am, because people like you went to corporate life. I went to let's have fun and maybe something gets created out of it.
So what do we tell those parents? Here's why. So, all the people holding you back saying it wasn't possible.
Yeah.
What I know about those people, this is how I know that there's this path and a sequence to everybody's life. I pretty much can guarantee, and guarantee is a strong word, but I can guarantee all those people that either made you feel like or told you that you couldn't do all these things, they hadn't done it.
Yeah.
Because people who have done it never give that bad advice.
Yeah.
So we can learn something as adults. Stop putting ourselves around the people that haven't done the thing we're trying to do.
Yeah, and I think that it's also important because I remember there would be some local professionals that did commercials or, indie film here that would come and talk. And they would kind of do the, if you can do anything else, do it. Don't do this. It's hard. And I always thought that that was the worst advice you could ever give. Because, yes, it's hard. But if you really want to do it, do it.
You know what you need to say to those people? And if you're ever in that class environment, maybe you have been, say, hey, the next time you hear that from any human, ask them, would you give it back?
Yeah.
What you've achieved, would you give it back?
Yeah, because it is always you shouldn't be discouraging someone. Now, I know it's somewhat of a weeding out scenario.
It is.
But
I know most won't.
Right. And I get that. But it's The world's going to take care of that.
Yeah. You know what they should do? They should share that.
Yeah.
That's what they should share. Share the struggle.
Yeah.
Right? Share if you feel like you wouldn't do it again. Share why.
Yeah.
Right? And let them know what that path is and just say, hey, if you start down this path, I've paved it, but let me talk to you about the journey.
Yeah.
And for a decade, for 2 decades, this is what it's going to look like. If you're someone that can commit to this journey, then start walking the path.
Yeah, and I think, I've had the privilege of talking to some of my former professors' classes about the industry and kind of, what I do. And I think, so many of them kind of don't care or don't pay attention, which I always thought was fascinating. Because it's like, I know that I'm an accountant, or at the time I might have been like a PA or whatever, but I'm doing what you supposedly want to do. And there were so many of them. It was funny. I was sitting probably as close to them as I am you, and they'd be on their phone while I'm talking. And it's like, you don't have to listen to me. I'm not getting offended by this.
Why are you even there?
But if you don't want to do this, then why are you wasting your money? Legitimately, why are you getting a degree in electronic media and broadcasting if you don't care to do this? Because even if you want to be in local TV and news, parts of this is relatable.
Yep.
That's not an easy road either. You're going to have to go to middle of nowhere Wisconsin and start in the freezing cold doing stand-ups in the middle of winter talking about the snow. So before you can get to the Cincinnati market.
Who's our local sports guy in Cincinnati?
I don't know anymore.
Mo Egger.
Okay.
Right, so he's all the ESPN stuff, 13-6, 15. He's the guy that has all the Bengals and Red stuff. So he was here a while ago. And when you sit and hear his story, it's like that's how you get there, you all.
Yeah.
It's the time when he was going to UD, working all these crazy hours and had no wife, doing all the bullshit stuff at radio stations.
Yeah.
And then him getting this call, he wanted to work at 700. That's where everybody wanted, 700 WLW, the big station, right? And I think he was producing some shows for Bill Cunningham or even some people in advance. And he got this call. He had always wanted to be on the radio. And he got this call, so I'm talking about a year and a half ago. But he got this call and said, hey, what are you doing Christmas morning? Either Christmas Eve or Christmas morning. And he was living in Dayton, I think, and it's terrible snow, and nobody else wanted to come in. And they said, we just need you to fill in for one day.
Yeah.
And he instantly said, yes. And then what happens is, if you do a good enough job that day, you probably get a second day.
Yeah.
Someone sees you. But the reason why, when the opportunity presented itself, the reason why he's good enough for them to call him back a second day is because all the years that he put in developing the skills, the professional development, so that when he got on the radio, it sounded good enough.
Yeah, and I saw a meme I have a couple friends that are in the TV news or radio industry, and they had that meme. It's like when you are watching the news on Christmas, there's an associate producer who's producing their newscast for the first time. There's the anchor is normally, a stand-up reporter that is getting to anchor for the first time. And it's because, it is Christmas or New Year's or whatever holiday it is that most of your normal newscasters get the day off. They get their shot at that point. And if they do well, they could advance. Yep. And if they don't, who
knows when you're getting another shot.
Exactly.
So the word is you better put in the time.
Yeah.
When no one's watching, when you're eating shit and making no money, so that when your chance comes, you're ready.
Yeah. And it was like those same people that weren't paying attention would then message me afterwards, because I'd give them my email or they'd find me on Facebook or whatever. And they'd be like, hey, thanks so much for coming. I'd love to hear more about, your story or whatever. And it's like, I already gave that to you. I gave you the baseline. And I watched you. That room's not big enough for me not to know your face on your social media profile.
So now it's time for them to take action. So what's the thing that is keeping people from taking action on something?
Fear. The fear of failure. The fear of, I think what drove me can sometimes be...
can hold others back.
Can hold others back, where it's that fear of someone saying, I told you so. I remember one of the first years I came back for Christmas. I went to my parents' church for Christmas service, and one of the parishioners came up and was like, so are you back for good or just visiting? And I was like, just visiting. It's been 6 months. Now I can see where 6 months might be it for some. But for me, I was like, I'm just getting started.
See that mindset. Well, I'm sure you would give your mom, the pharmacist, a lot of credit.
Yeah.
I'm sure you give your dad, the accountant, a lot of credit.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of kids that have moms as pharmacists and dads as accountants, and moms as accountants and dads as pharmacists that don't have this perspective and attitude and mental pursuit to achieve the thing and to be good at it and to keep going.
Yeah.
Has it always been there?
I think for me it has. I think for me I've always been different from my family. And that's kind of been what has driven me once I kind of realized that I was different and realized that like I can't go about it the same way that they did. I can't do what they do because that's not fulfilling to me. That sounds like a death sentence. But you still did something. Yeah. See, that's the important part. Yeah, for me it was I don't want to do that because that sounds terrible. Mm-hmm. That sounds like a miserable life. And I don't want to do that just because, I remember I originally went to NKU for theater and then double majored in theater and film and then took theater down to a minor so I could get out in 4 years because I was done being in college. I thought it was so good, Tim. Sorry, go ahead. It was good for what I did not want to be there anymore. I will say, looking back, it was good for what it was. But when I was there, I was like, I'm done. Yeah. I want out. Okay. These prison walls. Literally. And so I think that, I remember at my advising appointment to go to college, my mom asked my advisor at the time, we understand that he wants to do this, but what does it look like? What's his future look like? Is he going to get a job in this? And it's one of those things that, like, if you get an accounting degree or you get a business degree or a communications degree or whatever other degree you want, that's never a question. The question is never, if you get a BA in business administration, are you going to get a job? No one asks that question, even though that is one of the most broad topics. Marketing and business. Yeah. So, yeah, you could get a job or you could not because who knows? Like, there's no speciality there. Not that there's speciality in what I did necessarily, but the question is never, are you going to be able to get a job? Are you going to be able to support yourself? But that was the question that was asked by my parents. And it was, by all means, meant well. But I remember that as being kind of like the final nail in the coffin of like, I'll show you. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter. Because they were like, yeah, he could do cruise ships. He could do, whatever. Or if this doesn't work out, he could be a lawyer. A lot of people like, trial lawyers. It's very good to be able to be up in front of people and speak. So who do we listen to in life? Because here's the thing. The people that you loved, that honestly cared about you the most, Mom and Dad McDaniel, like, we're not talking bad about you. Yeah. But it's like you didn't know the advice to give this human. Because she is a pharmacist. Yeah. She saw her life the way she lived, and she's like, my life has been good. Yeah. I just want him to have a good life. Right. Right? So just do what I figured out. Right. So who do we listen to? Yourself. I think you really what was great for me growing up is this is going to sound weird, so let me rephrase it. I was able to create a world for myself by myself and entertain myself. I would lock myself in my room and play Office because I'd have like some office supplies, and I'd run a Staples, for instance, or I'd make up some other imaginary world and entertain myself for hours, or go outside and entertain myself in some fashion, playing by myself. Not that I didn't have friends. It was just like my friends didn't necessarily live on the same block that I did. So getting my parents to drive me around between my brother's sports and like their lives just wasn't necessarily always an option. So what I would do is I would entertain myself. And I think that for that was able to kind of create a safe space to believe in myself, to find out what I wanted to do and to kind of just internally say, we can do this. Because the outside world didn't believe it. I had some people that were like, oh yeah, if that's what you want to do, great, go after it. But it was not necessarily like, I got you, I'll lift you up, inherently. It was more like, if that's what you want to do, go after it. Like, sure. And so I think for me, I had to know myself that that's what I wanted to do. And then I was going to do whatever it took to do that. But I wasn't always confident in that. I think that
was
that's
the next question.
very important to know that, like, I when I moved to LA in 2012, my mom drove out with me. And when I drove her to the airport and drove back to where I was staying with a friend that I had met on a movie here in Kentucky a couple years prior. And so I was like sleeping on his couch until I found a place. And when I was driving back on the freeway, I was a mess. I like kept it together to take my mom to the security line, and then immediately started crying on the way back to the car and lost it. Unconsolable tears as I was driving to his house to stay on his couch. And I remember calling some of my friends and being like, I've made a terrible mistake. What am I doing? And they were like, it's day one. Breathe. Calm down. You don't have to have this figured out today or tomorrow or in a week. Just focus on what you can focus on and then move forward. And I think that that was kind of like enough reassurance at the time to be like, okay, I'll figure it out.
So what would have happened if you didn't have that small group of friends?
I probably wouldn't have stayed very long. Or, I mean, not to say that my friend, once I saw, I guess the other part of that story, or the other piece of that is I hadn't seen my friend that I was staying with while my mom was still in town. So like I was going to see him for the first time since moving to LA after I dropped my mom off. So like in that hour drive, I was alone in the world. At least that's how it felt. And then so I called them. They calmed me down. And then when I got there, he was like, all right, let's go get some food. Like, let's hang out. And it was very much like that support system between my friends back home and him letting me stay on his couch for as long as I needed. I was only there for a week until I found an apartment and moved in. But it was like that was kind of what I needed to just kind of take my mind off of it.
How many people would you consider were a part of that group of support for an hour, for a day, for a week? How many people?
There's probably like 6 or 7. Maybe less, maybe 5.
I don't think the average human has 6 or 7 people to pick him up in that way.
Yeah. And some of those people aren't here anymore. I mean, they're alive.
Uh-huh. They're
just not in my group anymore.
Why?
They chose to see themselves out.
Expand on that.
Some of them kind of decided that through their own actions, whether they kind of like, they were together with one of the other people in the group and then they didn't work out, they separated. So that's kind of part of it. The other part of it is some people, I identify as a bisexual and I'm marrying a man in 2 years, and they did not like that. They did not agree with that part of life.
Those were people that were in your life for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I got engaged, who I would consider to be my best friend of 18 years decided they didn't want to be a part of it anymore.
What do we do with that?
You have to grieve it. But you have to move on. And I think that the worst thing you can do, and I mean, I'm not over it, I should say, fully. I don't know that I ever will be. But I think you have to just kind of know that that people are seasonal sometimes. And that can be hard, especially if they've been around for as long as those people had. And that they get you to a point of kind of growth and understanding, and then when you've kind of outgrown them, it's fine that they see themselves out. As much as that hurts.
Yeah, it seems harsh.
Yeah. But I think the reminder is, for me, is that they chose to see themselves out. I didn't make that decision. The only thing I did was finally be me. 100% me. And those that wanted to stay a part of it have stayed a part of it. And those that didn't left.
How long did it take you to come to the realization to have this conversation with yourself first before you could say it on a microphone?
27 years. I came out very late in life. I think bisexuality is kind of a hard thing because there is the duality of attraction. And so you think you can push down that other side and be the person, quote unquote, you're supposed to be, that people want you to be. And I think...
Like choose a side?
Yeah.
Whatever it is, right?
Yeah. And I think that I was very, kind of focused on making it. So it was a very easy choice for a long time. But once I started getting success and started being able to have a comfortable life, it was no longer something I could ignore.
Then how long did it take you to be okay with the idea that these people that you really cared about and loved weren't going to be in your life, but you really were, you're still progressing through it? There's still grief around
Oh,
it.
100%.
But when did you get to the point where you could be honest with yourself about that people come and people go, and that be okay, that's what's necessary in life?
I think that actually came before.
Really?
Which is an interesting part, but it's because there were people that I was very close to for a long time, and then they just kind of it wasn't...
It happens with all reasons.
Right.
Not necessarily because you came out as bisexual, right? It's just people come and go, because there's people that I've been great friends with in my life.
Yeah.
The things just happen.
Yeah.
Right? And then you realize, oh, yeah, we're just different.
I think moving to Los Angeles after college helped create that, because there were people that I was very close to, and then they, you just don't see them every day. Mm-hmm. There's not that FaceTime, so you just naturally drift apart. And I think that there were people in college that I was very close to. There were people in high school that I was very close to, and I think in college it started with high school friends that we may have even been attending the same school. But it wasn't that we were in the same classes. We weren't running into each other on campus. We had to be intentional about seeing each other.
Yeah, who wants that?
And if we weren't intentional, both sides,
Yeah.
This isn't certainly a one-way street that this was done to me. I did it to them as well. We both just kind of drifted apart, and neither of us, it's going to sound harsh, but neither of us cared enough to continue that relationship. But I don't think that it was intentional or cognizant. It just happened. Life does that to us a lot.
I think relationships are the same thing. We live in a capitalistic system for economy and for our world. I think relationships with friends and interpersonal relationships are the same.
Yeah.
If you don't continue to bring value every day, that relationship becomes less valued. The only one that's not like that is parents.
Yeah.
Because that's even the case with siblings at times.
Yeah.
Right? And so I think we get unconditional love from our moms. It feels like that to me, that's the person.
Yeah.
Right? Somebody could push back and say, well, not mine. But I think, if there's one it's like our moms.
Yeah.
Your
100%.
moms, no matter what you did, they might not agree with it, but they're showing up.
Yeah.
Right?
Shout out Donna G.
Right, there you go.
Yeah.
And so dads are different. If it's traditional roles,
Yeah.
Dads are different. Right? I think they love you the same, but there's the same, but it's just different. But then beyond that, you have to continue to show up and be valuable in other people's lives. If not, you're going to be less valuable.
Yeah.
And the same thing applies for other people as well.
Yeah. And so I think that kind of, obviously wasn't necessarily cognizant of it, but that kind of helped bridge that gap to where now it's well, to be honest, don't see them that often anymore. Mm-hmm. We kind of had been drifting to begin with. Yeah. So it's it was kind of easier to let them go because I already had the people that I do see.
Some replacements, Tim. That's me.
Yeah.
You had replacements.
I know. But people that I interacted with in my daily life out in Los Angeles, and then having my partner support obviously helps out a lot.
You don't need many.
No.
You don't need many. Like I said, most people have said, you just need, really, I think you just need one.
Yeah.
But then if that person lets you down, you don't find yourselves in their live, that stuff. But if you have a little group of 2 or 3 or 4 people
Yeah.
that you're just going all in for life with, probably have a better chance of it working out.
Yeah.
Right? It's when you find yourself vacant and not having those people. So go all the way back to the beginning of the roller coaster of this career.
Yeah.
Right? And you get to the end of a job and you're like, is there another one here? Why is that roller coaster worth it? Think about the moments that it's not feeling good.
Yeah. I mean, and I will say that during COVID was particularly difficult. And I was working during COVID, so like I was.
You live in the Republic of
blessed.
California.
COVID was different, not at all because of that. COVID was difficult because of my work completely changed. We went from a paper process for everything, practically, to going digital during COVID. And we don't have, still 3 years later, don't really have great systems in place for that. And I was on Euphoria season 2 at the time, and we did not have a system in place. No one had a system in place. But then when we came back and did 2 special episodes, but it was so kind of like, will we, won't we do them, that when it finally got greenlit to happen, everyone started at the same time. So normally the production department and the accounting department start first. We kind of get everything set up. Then we start bringing on the other departments. And that, set deck, costumes, makeup, all those people. During those special episodes, we all started at the same time. But we all had to start remote, working from home, using systems that none of us had used before, that honestly weren't really set up to do what we do, to fully replace the process that we had. And because I had been working with the studio to kind of help develop that plan with all the other accountants for the studio, I was the only one on my team that knew what we were doing. And I had to teach everyone, my staff. I was still teaching myself, and then the rest of the show's departments, how to make what we did on paper digital.
You fully embraced that. I can tell you're the guy who did.
I did.
Yep.
But it was terrible.
Why?
Because it wasn't set up correctly. I didn't feel like I had a great understanding.
And then no one did.
And then no one did. And it was very much like, because I was the only one that had any understanding,
it all fell on you.
It was all on me. But it was also like, we weren't set up for that, because we couldn't even be face to face to kind of like look over my shoulder and see how I'm doing it.
So why is all this worth it? Because it doesn't sound like
it. Yeah, I know it sounds terrible when you put it into words. I think it's because ultimately it's still my dream. My dream has always been to create, television and film that is both funny but makes you feel. My favorite television show is Scrubs. And what I love about that show is it's inherently funny, but then there are moments that will absolutely wreck you. When Nurse Roberts dies, to this day, I will cry. Because you grow up loving that, you go through the seasons loving these characters, and then they take one away. And one that was like a funny character, but she wasn't consequential to the plot. Like she was a character you could lose and it wouldn't mess anything up. However, they set her character up in a way, and they set up her dying in a way that you couldn't help but fall apart every time. And I think that resonated so much for me, because I think that that's life. There are some fantastically humorous and funny moments and joy-filled moments. But then there are also some devastatingly sad moments. And the fact that they could have an episode with her dying and then be able to figure out how to still have some characters reeling with that death, but the other characters, and this is kind of life as well, are able to move on very quickly and keep you going, you get excited. And so it's like that dichotomy of I'm happy, but I'm sad. And like, should I feel guilty? Is it fine?
So being a part of the creation is worth it.
Yeah. I think, and it's wholly personal. No one can make you feel that it's worth it. You have to reason all of that work for yourself to say, I get to wake up every morning and help create television or film or whatever it is that you're doing. And you have to enjoy that no matter what. And there's a lot of what's.
Yeah, see, that's the thing that the Tim that became that little boy that didn't feel like he fit in.
Yeah.
And you had to go in your room for 3 hours and create your own world.
Yeah.
And when you didn't have all the confidence. That's the part of the person you are now was being developed then.
Yeah.
The resilience, the keeping going, that knowing it's going to be worthwhile, that you can rely on yourself some.
Yeah.
And so that's what's so important about when things are really tough. I heard there was a round table with, it felt like it was almost like I invoke these names that some people, they don't fit into this culture now, but like Charlie Rose when I was growing up, he was an awesome person to listen to. And it's a weird world to understand that now he's not okay to listen to.
Yeah, they're flawed humans that.
And it's like, but aren't we all?
Yeah.
So I don't know what is, the word cancel. I hate that word,
Yeah.
but it's like, what's too much to then let a super talented person make us better? I don't know the answer to these things. Like, where's the cutoff?
I think it comes down to that person and that personality. So, you look at the Charlie Roses or the Matt Lauers. And they didn't just do it once.
Yeah.
Or twice. Or 3 times. It was consistent behavior that they were able to do and get away with.
That then the stupid system supported them for so long.
And then the system supported them. So it's not like they're the only one.
I know.
And I think that I think the morning show on Apple TV does this really well. It's, I think, loosely based on the Matt Lauer situation.
Those 2 ladies are hilarious, man.
Yeah.
Because it's really Jennifer Aniston.
Right. It's Reese Witherspoon.
Yeah.
And I think that what you get in that is they did it until they got caught. And if you're going to do it until you get caught,
you're going to deal with the repercussions and the penalties. And it's just what's right.
Right. Then you're not, and you're honestly not that sorry. Like, you're sorry you got caught.
Yeah.
And maybe in a couple years, with hopefully some therapy and some other things, you can recognize that was wrong.
Yeah.
But that work needs to take place. And then even then, it's kind of like, by that point, does anyone really want to listen to you?
Are you irrelevant and all that?
You've lost the trust in the public. And it's kind of like...
It's like the analogy or the metaphor. It's like, what's the death penalty?
Yeah.
Like, what's a 5-year prison sentence versus the death penalty, right? I'm not even making the arguments for it. It's tough because I know that every night when I would go home when I was really poor and I turned off my cable and I didn't have the money to have cable and I would work until 11 or 11:30 and I would come home, this guy named Charlie Rose was just on PBS and his interviews were incredible.
Yeah.
He would interview people in a way, not any indifferent thing like Larry King. These iconic people that just had great conversations. And it's tough, right? It's tough because, but back to the round table. I saw a round table that looked like it was a Charlie Rose setting, but he probably wasn't in it. But it was, a lot of them on Instagram. There was Robert De Niro was sitting around the table with, man, there were so many, I don't think it was Dustin Hoffman, but there was a bunch of actors. And Tom Hanks says, they're saying, like, what's the advice you would want to give your young self? I think that was the context of it. And he said, somewhere in the context of, it's going to be okay. Just relax. It will pass. It's going to be fine.
Yeah.
Right? And so there's something about that, about life, however I got off on this and thought about it. There's something about that young kid and getting to the point where you are now. I just wish everybody knew. It's like, hey, listen, it's probably not as bad as you think it is.
Yeah.
Just like when it's great. It's probably not as great as you think it is. Just let a little time go by. because I know in all our toughest moments, just little time go by, and it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
It's going to work out.
That immediacy. You want that immediate success or failure.
Or better feeling.
Or, yeah.
Right.
And it's not possible a lot of times.
Is that because we just haven't become the person yet?
Yeah.
That's it, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think you're in an environment that, like, you're unable to change for that moment for whatever reason that is. But then you're able to change that environment, hopefully, and then things get better.
What do you think we are? I won't invoke the podcast and the people I was listening to last night, but they talked about the new forefront of this fast evolving world, about our identity.
Mm-hmm.
And what I think about that is, are we just our thoughts? What is this thing? Am I literally just my thoughts? Like, there's a battle going on right now on campuses when the stuff happened in the Middle East. We don't have to go there.
Yeah.
But just a battle erupted. And it's like those people used to agree on so many things, and now they're battling over ideas and thoughts and perspectives, when maybe before October 9th or whenever the moment was, they got along almost about everything.
Yeah.
Going to the same university, the same classes. And I'm like, are we just our thoughts? What's this identity?
I think we're our thoughts and our actions, but I think what's important is that everything needs to be put into context. I think oftentimes you look at things and you don't necessarily understand it. I have one of my coworkers is from, this is terrible. I don't remember where she's from, but she's from that side of the world.
The Middle East, not the Ukraine thing going on right now.
Not the Ukraine thing.
Palestine, Israel, the whole.
And not necessarily right there, but
yeah, in
neighbors.
that culture, in the
Neighbors.
Okay.
And what's crazy is, like, she grew up in the U.S., but her parents are from there. A lot of her family's still there. She goes back and visits them. And what I think is interesting is that she has a completely different perspective on this because she grew up with it. Her parents grew up with it. Her grandparents grew up with it. And I think that we kind of take for granted in America how good we have it, and that we somehow know better because we're in America. When we don't really know the history. I mean, people don't know the history in our country. So it's easy to be philosophical about how things should work. But if you don't do the research, and it's not a quick Google search, Wikipedia isn't going to tell you the entire history of that conflict, or even a couple news articles. You would almost need to spend a lifetime or a significant amount of time to do the research to really understand what's going on there.
On all of them, because it's deep.
Yeah.
You know, the first thing that I did, because I haven't shared opinions on it, I said, let me go figure it out a little bit. Let me watch some documentaries. And documentaries aren't necessarily the truth. That's Ken Burns' perspective about the Middle East and Israel, right? And it's like, but if you go back multiple generations in 400 and 500 and 600 years, I don't even know if we can understand the context then.
Yeah.
And all the things that were happening. And because if you look at a battle over cultural, land, ideology, power, it's all these things. Whether it's Russia or Ukraine and all of it, it's like, guys, I know there's bad people, but just the basic of humanity just seems insane to me.
Yeah.
But then I'm like, well, it's kind of how it's been. It's what Genghis Khan was doing. It's like, have we really not grown? Have we really not improved that we're still having these battles? I guess that's what Napoleon was doing. I just went and saw the movie, right?
Yeah.
I guess that's what was happening there. I guess that's what stupid Germany and World War II, I guess it's just like, are we not at some point going to evolve and develop? So I'd push back a little bit to say it doesn't have to be America that says we know how to do it better. But if somebody doesn't figure out how to do this better, we're going to keep doing the same shit.
Yeah. But I think that, and it's not necessarily America or whoever it is.
But it was because it was others before us.
It's just when it's written, they always say that the winner writes history.
Yeah.
So we know, most of us sort of know or pretend to know what happened in the American Revolution.
Mm-hmm.
But we only know what we were taught. And since we're in America, we're taught what America did, how America won. But we don't know the British perspective, and I don't know that we need to. But that's to say that we have an idea of what happened. But it's because our people presented that idea to us.
It's the things that so are we just our thoughts?
Yeah.
Right?
I think that we're just, our identity, I think, is not only just our thoughts. Oh, I guess it's all of our thoughts. It's not only our thoughts personally, it's our thoughts about what other people's thoughts are. Mm-hmm. How other people, we think how other people view us. And I think that's another another good thing. I'm going through puberty today, apparently.
Hey, you have the sweet call button.
Oh.
Dave forgot to tell us about that because I probably jumped the gun. But here's what I tell people often, which you can take this and run with it. I tell them, like, hey, guys, like, I grew up being raised very religious.
Yeah.
Right? If I would have been born in a Muslim country, I'd be Muslim.
Yeah.
If I would have been brought up in a Jewish family, if I'm going to be a religious person, probably would have been Jewish. I just happened to be born into a family that went to a really strict Christian church. I don't go to church anymore, right? And so that's what I'm saying, our thoughts of the people that were around, the things that were taught. It's fascinating. And so, man, growth is hard.
Yeah.
That's the context too, right? That's why I'm trying to judge people, even people that I think like you're just not a good person. I'm trying to judge them based on the context of their education, the people that were around them that influenced them. Because if it's hard for let's just say we take the person in our life that's good, that we say treats people well, and it's tough for them to even change. Somebody that's bad, it's going to be tough for them to change.
Yeah.
I don't know what we do with all this.
Therapy.
Yeah, I mean, but people are in therapy for decades.
Yeah.
And they don't change. It's weird. I don't know why this world still has a struggle with like treating people well, but still with an accountability framework.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm glad that we have laws and rules because the bad people would overtake us. I'm glad that we were fortunate to be born in this country because we do take a lot of things for granted. We can talk about the system all day.
Yeah.
But that me and you get to do this. That you get to be born in Louisville, Kentucky and choose to go to NKU and choose, even though when people are telling you like, hey, you shouldn't do this, you can't do it, you choose to go to LA.
Yeah.
Right? The choices that we have every day, in spite of all the things holding us back and all the wrongs that have been done to us, it's incredible.
Yeah.
Right? And so I don't know what we do with that, too, for people that feel like they've been wronged. It's like, yeah, you have. Yeah, I don't want to take it away, you have, but if you keep living there, that's probably where you're going to exist. It's a weird thing about our thoughts. It's just in thinking about listening to thought leaders. Because I could turn on all these traditional news sources, left, right, whatever, and I can listen to them now without being influenced, though.
Mm-hmm.
See, that's why can't people be that?
Because they weren't taught to. But I also think it's not that they weren't taught to, it's that we've changed how news works. When television was created, we gave, the reason that you get all those channels through rabbit ears for free.
The three were good. Peter Jennings and Tom Brokaw, those people were good.
And, Walter Cronkite back in the day.
Yeah.
That's who we got news from. And the government gave those stations for free to do news. The news has now decided they need to make money. And the way they get money is through advertising. And now we also need a 24-hour news cycle. So they have to just talk. And when you let people talk too much, I'm sure this podcast will be seen as that in some senses for this episode. That when you talk, sometimes you talk too much. Sometimes you just espout something because you need you have to fill the air.
Where that should have been around your 6 friends.
Yeah. And so, and you're just trying to keep it interesting because you've got to talk, if you're doing a cable news show and it's an hour or 2 hours or whatever, you think about the morning news shows that are like 4 hours.
Both 2.5 hours of commercials.
Yeah. Both local and, national. A lot of times they're repeating the same things because just there's not that much that goes on day to day. Or certainly, I guess, there's a lot that goes on day to day, but there's not either newsworthy or things that people would want to hear about day to day that maybe we should start hearing about day to day. But they're not going to get people to tune in. They're not going to get the clicks on the websites. And so now we've just created a society that needs to be entertained. And we get this, the reason that, and the entertainment perspective of it, the reason that so many things are getting, movies, some might argue they're getting longer when you look at the Scorseses and the Nolans of the world. But then most regular movies are...
Hour and 52 hours.
Yeah. And, you look at theater, Broadway, 2.5 hours with an intermission at most. That's considered a long show. With television, you've got, it used to be 22 episodes, 30 minutes. It might have been like 26 minutes of the actual episode. The rest are commercials. Now I think it's like 22 and a half, maybe even less. And it's all just adding more and more commercials.
So how are Mark and Tim going to change this?
We specifically aren't, but we could help lead the group of people and create more groups to find ways for it to not be marketing dominant news.
But consumers consume it.
Yes.
You're saying, I don't anymore.
Right. But everyone does. My grandparents grew up with Fox News on 24/7.
But I remember CNN in the Gulf War. So I'm 44.
Okay.
That's almost when the 24-hour news cycle started.
Yeah.
I remember that. I remember being that kid and seeing missiles explode at night and like, how's this a good thing? But I tuned in as a kid. I was watching it.
Yeah.
So is it bad? Because isn't this like true democracy? Because are we saying that not everybody should have a voice?
I'm not saying that everyone should have a voice. I think everyone should have a voice as long as it's a productive voice. And I get that could be relative.
Yeah.
But I also think that someone that is just, saying stuff to say stuff to get clicks or whatever is not really helping anyone. Like if you're just talking to talk, to become famous or valued or whatever, but you're not really adding anything to the story. You're just, I think even though I'm a sucker for it, like TMZ is kind of like this, where it's like TMZ is just, celebrity gossip nonsense most of the time. Someone went to the grocery store.
And they look terrible today.
Yeah, their wedding ring isn't on. What does that mean? This person was out with this person last night. These people were partying.
This is their third Starbucks of the day.
Right. And it's like, does that really matter? No. But do I click on the story?
Yep.
Yeah, because I get...
Some endorphins or something hitting, man.
Yeah. I get, I'm at work or I'm at home and I'm bored. And so I'm like, how do I entertain myself? And because I'm not going to go outside, not that I can't, I just don't.
Mm-hmm.
I'll, open up TikTok and scroll.
Go down the deep hole.
And so I think it's just that we have become a society that has to be entertained constantly because of the way that we kind of built it.
Tim, you're espousing conservative beliefs that we should control ourselves and act better and do the right things.
I will push back and say I don't know that those are necessarily conservative.
Yeah,
I think that
that's how they're
those
labeled.
Are like maybe more moderate.
Yeah, more because that's what I am.
Yeah.
And I think what's so crazy to me, I'm at this place where I don't try to think of myself as being better than others or having better thoughts. But I find myself in the world sometimes having those better thoughts because they don't fit anywhere. Because I thought about, like when you shared that you're bisexual, and I go back to me starting this company. Call me whatever label, but I'm a guy that is attracted to women. So it's straight. It's whatever it is, right? That's funny. That's straight. That's right. It's like,
Yeah.
okay. So, but the funny thing is that one of my best relationships inside of my real estate company that I built is a guy who's gay. And he's just an awesome human.
Yeah.
I don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
Like, I really don't care. Like, if he was a shitty human and he was gay, you're a shitty human.
Yeah.
If you're a shitty human, you're bisexual, you're a shitty human. Right? If you're a really good person, you're straight, you're just a good person. And I just don't comprehend this world where people just aren't judged on their behavior and how they treat others. I don't get it, man.
I think it's because we don't see it. Like, I think if
I guess we're not looking. I don't know, man.
we're not looking
Yeah.
because we're at home. We're watching TV. We're playing on our phones. Even when we're in public, I do this all the time. If I'm waiting for a group of friends outside of a restaurant, I'm flipping on my phone. I'm not interacting with the world around me. I'm waiting for my friends that I want to talk to. And so you just have that insular belief of like, well, everyone believes what I believe because my friends and I believe a certain way. And if I do,
Just
am
stay
lucky
there.
that I have friends that have different beliefs.
In all
And so we can,
categories.
challenge each other and talk to each other. And like, we have that discourse.
See, that's what I wish society was.
Yeah.
I wish that everybody who disagreed the things that our brains told us we believed, I wish we could sit and have conversation and then not leave the conversation and everyone hate each other.
Yeah. And I think that we stopped doing that when we started building suburbs, which is, you look at, in 2015, I did a Euro trip where I backpacked with a group of friends, and we went to 6 or 7 different countries in 26 days. And in Europe, everyone doesn't have big homes. A lot of them have small apartments. Don't have big TVs. They have small TVs, if a TV at all. But they have parks or piazzas or whatever they want to call them, depending on where you are. And that's where you go to hang out. That's where your kids will play. That's where you'll go have dinner. There will be artists, there will be musicians, and everyone goes to those places. They don't stay at home and just sit and watch TV or play on their phone. They interact with people of all walks of life because otherwise they're cooped up in a very small room. And I think that in America, because it's so large, like
It's big.
how many Europes I don't even know how many Europes can fit inside of America, but
a few.
many.
Yeah.
I think one in Texas alone. And so you have that ability where like we're this huge country that are all separated, and then we've created our domains, our homes. Everyone wants the mansion. Everyone wants the acreage. They don't want to be next to someone. They want to have their own space, which I completely
I can
agree
identify.
with.
Yeah,
I want my own space.
Yeah, and not be bothered by people
Right.
at times.
But we lose that interaction, that daily interaction with people, if the only people we interact with are our close friends and maybe our work colleagues. And maybe we don't like our work colleagues, so we barely talk to them. And then you go home, you're either by yourself or with your family, and then you may see your friends on the weekends, but you're not really interacting with people very much. And I think that that's where, and I'm certainly guilty of it, as I said earlier, I don't go outside. I just sit on my couch and flip through my phone or, play on my computer or whatever. And so that's when you become, kind of back to your thoughts. That's when you just have your thoughts to be with. You're not with anyone else. And then if you see friends, they might have similar thoughts, or maybe they push back a little bit, but you generally agree on most things.
It's kind of what happens the longer you live.
Yeah.
Right? The average person. They get comfortable. So you're going to chalk it up to we're just a product of our environment? Because I would push back and say, no. If you are in your farmhouse on 20 acres, which honestly I envy that a little bit,
Yeah.
but if you're there, no, I'm not allowing that. You can say suburbs are the blame. That's fine. But I think the people are the blame.
Well, sure. I mean,
Right?
but the people
'Cause-
built the suburbs.
Yeah, but
so,
read a book.
Yeah.
Watch a podcast. Listen to someone else with a different perspective and try to understand them.
But that's work.
Yeah, but I don't know. But that what that is a better life. Because don't be so scared of their perspective, because maybe you are right and you can go a little bit deeper into your belief, but try to understand them. That's the problem with society.
Yeah.
I don't have to agree with you, but understand where they're coming from. understand their evolution and their context. Understand it. Have some respect as a human. If you treat people well, Tim, good. You're reasonable enough for me to listen to understand where you're coming from. If you're an asshole and a terrible human, no, I'm not going to listen.
Yeah.
See, we've lost that thing. It
but
sucks.
I think it's the interaction.
Yeah.
It's the fact that, like, yeah, you can read a book.
Yeah.
But then if you've just read the book, what are you going to do?
It creates an idea maybe.
Yeah, but then if you don't espouse it to anyone, or you may have thought this one thing, but then maybe you're like, oh, I think this thing, but like I'm not comfortable telling my friends this, or like I don't want to get into that with them.
Do we have to put a backpack on for 26 days and walk through Europe to have this?
I think so. I don't think that, but I do think you have to get out of your town, and I think you have to travel, and not say that you have to go to Europe or another country. Just go to a different state. Go to the West Coast. Go to the Northeast. Go to the Northwest. Go to Texas.
Everywhere but California.
Go to California.
I've spent a lot of time in California. I'm just poking the bear on that.
I mean, listen, California is great for what California is great for. Kentucky is great for what Kentucky is. It's
a good experience at all.
I call myself a Kentuckian who moved west
to follow your dreams
because I believe I am a Kentuckian.
What is that? If you believe you're that, what is that?
I think for me, it's kind of where my upbringing is. I think that when, California is, and specifically LA, is a town of transplants. So whenever, like now it's Christmas time, the town is practically dead because everyone's visiting their family wherever they're from.
You're here.
I'm here.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it's the feeling of that's where I feel most connected. That's my grounding moment. And that's when I think of like my personality and, how I was raised and kind of what are the core principles of Tim. They start with being from Kentucky. And I get a lot of weird interactions and looks for that because people are like, I have friends that will come to my apartment and count the things that are Kentucky related in my apartment, and it's a game to them. And admittedly, I probably have too many. And my partner is definitely limiting the amount of Kentucky stuff that is allowed to kind of expand and create a together home and not just
a
Tim's
Tim
home. Yeah. Or a Kentucky home, I guess. So I think that it's kind of, for me, it's that grounding principle. Whenever I come back to Kentucky, I feel kind of centered. Mm-hmm. Even as crazy as Christmas is, and like it's kind of go a lot of times for me because it's like visiting family, visiting friends, trying to just enjoy Kentucky for what it is. You don't really have a lot of time to just hang out and relax sometimes. But I always feel like it's kind of a home base, a safe space for me.
As I'm sitting here, I think about Kentucky, as I like where I'm from.
Yeah.
You went to school up here, but every time I travel and I come back, it feels good being home.
Yeah.
It's comfortable.
Yeah.
Right? You have your people. But the funny thing is that someone drew these lines.
Yeah.
What is Kentucky? Like, I think it used to be a part of the Louisiana Purchase. If not, it was close. Mm-hmm. It was a part of a bigger area.
Yeah.
The reason why we call this thing Kentucky is because there's a river that goes, like, we're defined on a third of the boundary of the state by the Ohio River.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's by where a creek goes between Tennessee and Kentucky. Mm-hmm. And then where we meet West Virginia when you cross another river. And it's like, what is that? How are these cultures defined?
Yeah.
Because I would say the same thing. Like the reputation Kentucky has, I'm like, okay, guys, there's parts of it, but there's parts of every state that are like that.
Sure.
Every state. Go to California.
Go up north.
Yes, you will find some.
Yeah. Actually, you don't have to go up that north. You just have to travel like an hour out to the farmlands.
Like north of San Fran. Is that what it is, or is it like northeast?
I think it's in between.
Is it?
Yeah. I mean, like certainly north of San Fran, but in between San Fran and
like
LA.
East, so you kind of go east on both? Okay.
Yeah.
Not along the coast, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's where it, it's very red there.
Yeah. And so that's funny too. It's like, what is red? I don't know. I don't fit anywhere. Because there's certain principles that I have that people would say, oh, man, that's really conservative. And then there's principles that are like, oh, yeah, you definitely are not conservative.
Yeah.
It's just a weird world now, right? It's these boundaries that we have defined for so long. It's like we're stuck in those and we can't move beyond them.
It's terrible.
It is terrible. Yeah, I think it sucks. What is Tim going to be in 10 years?
Different, but I don't know. It's hard to say because I think that when you go into these 5-year plans, these 10-year plans, I think it's great to try and set goals. But I think that the difference is when you go, oh, in 5 years, I want to be this. In 10 years, I want to be this. If you don't make it, there could be a sense of failure. However, you know, it's kind of the shoot for the stars or shoot for the moon, land amongst the stars. The stars could be great. Yeah, the moon probably would have been amazing, or maybe it would have been terrible, but because you thought you wanted that. But what you actually want is here. So I think that that's weird. I mean, I have goals that I would like to achieve. I would like to ultimately, in the next 10 years, produce a feature film, possibly a television show. I think that that's a very achievable thing, but it's also something that, like, if it doesn't happen in the next 5 to 10 years, I'm going to do my best to not make that a negative for myself. I want to be something where, because in reality, it could be that I'm producing, but it's just not my stuff. It's somebody else's stuff, which is also fine and great. But ultimately, I want to eventually at some point produce my own things. Not necessarily stuff that I've written, but properties that I have acquired, stories that I have acquired that I want to then make into something. And so in the next 10 years, I would like that to happen. I would like to have a family, kids, which is going to be expensive. So I think that those are kind of like general milestones, but I don't want to say like these, well, I think the kids need to happen in 10 years. But outside of that, I don't know that I want to necessarily hammer it down to like, in 10 years, I'll be doing this.
What are you protecting against? You use two words that are contradictory.
Yeah.
You used fine and great in the same sentence.
Okay.
They can't exist together.
Why not?
Because if something's just fine, it's not great. Anything in life, you're like, just like be honest about this. Somebody, it's like, I'm fine. That's not great. Fine is like, it's okay. It's acceptable. I can find some joy in there. It's okay. But it's not great.
No.
Like a relationship, you're like, yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
That's not great. I think we should achieve and work every day to try to pursue greatness in whatever we do. And if you fall short, I think that's okay. But I don't think we should allow ourselves to believe that fine, while we're in the midst of the process, I don't think that we should allow ourselves to accept that fine's going to be okay. If in the pursuit of greatness, it ends up being fine, it's fine. But I think we have to remove it from our mind. Because trying to achieve greatness, and you're someone that cares about being really good.
Yeah.
If you allow yourself a backup plan, and I think that's what fine is, you might take it.
Sure. But I'd argue that for me, the backup plan is a safety net to keep me pushing.
That's a different way to think about it.
Because I always look at it, my backup plan is to teach. Always has been. So it's always been there.
To teach what?
Film.
To teach them
to teach what I do.
To teach them to keep going beyond something that you don't know. I almost said a comment an hour earlier about professors and people that teach.
Yeah.
I guess we need them. But they aren't the ones to learn from.
No, I think they are the ones to help you unlock learning and
knowledge. I'll give you that.
I don't know. I have not met a professor, as much as I like all of my professors, well, most of them. none of them singularly taught me something that blew my mind. I think what they opened up was where I have a possibility to go. So they taught me a concept that I could expand upon. And I think that's what teaching is.
Do you know you don't have to wait to become that with social media and with YouTube and stuff now?
Sure.
You could be that now.
But I don't want to.
Yeah, but I think there's an obligation for society to give back. If we live in this great place.
Sure. And I give back, but my way of giving back now is through my assistants, the people below me.
Okay.
I teach them, and then I bring them up.
It's fair. We need that.
And I think that's because I think the issue, well, YouTube University is great for trade skills. I think finite learning is different because when you teach someone, like, here's how you set up a microphone.
They have to set the microphone up.
They can set it up. It's tangible.
Mm-hmm.
A concept like how to be a good producer, it's not tangible. And it's also not one thing.
But the beginning is, right.
And it's not one thing that I do.
But couldn't you articulate what being a good producer is? Couldn't you?
To me, but someone else may have a different opinion.
But couldn't you, from what you've seen, from good producers,
Yeah.
bad producers, things that have gone well, things that haven't gone well, I believe someone like you can cut down a learning curve. I believe you can cut down the process of, I think that's what a great leader and teacher does. They can't take you beyond where they are.
Yeah.
They could just shrink the 10 years they had to learn into 3 or 4 or 5 for you. And then I think that actually makes a better society, because then what that person's going to do with the second 5 years that me and you were still learning, they're going to make us better.
Yeah.
I think that's what we have to do. So I think when you're in the midst of it, for everybody coming up behind you, that is what, we don't have to sit down and listen to YouTube for an hour. I just know when I don't know how to do something now and I need instructions, I search in YouTube and I find someone that shows me how to do something better. Now, they're not doing it for me.
Yeah.
But I'll set it here, and if I need to build something or put it together, I'll build it watching that, and then I know how to do it. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like, I think there is something that for the people that are doing something well, you don't have to wait until the backup plan.
Right. And I'm not saying that you can't. I think that is more intentional teaching. Instead of just, where I was kind of going with that, with like, yeah, I could nail it down to the nuts and bolts of what a good producer is. But if I'm just saying that on YouTube, what is that actually doing for anyone? Other than like someone, maybe.
There's going to be 5 of 1,000 that it's going to really help.
Right.
That those 5 people might not be exposed to a Tim.
Sure. But I'd also argue that those 5 people, even if they could do it, where they're watching YouTube University, knowing what a good producer is doesn't make a good producer.
No, I agree. That's what I'm saying. They put it into action. But I'm saying those 5 people are going to take more action. The 995 aren't. I've learned that about life.
Yeah.
There's so many people that will sit in a room and hear the same thing and do nothing with it. But 5 people. Because I bet you could look back on your life, you heard something. There was someone that was a catalyst. Something triggered and something happened. But that's the luck piece.
Yeah. But the business aspect of it is if I put that on YouTube, sure, maybe I can get it monetized.
No, I'm not talking about that.
But I am.
Okay.
But if I put that on YouTube, I'm not just going to give that away for free. Just like those videos on how to set up a microphone aren't for free. There's commercials beforehand. So there's some monetization of that. But
Elon Musk released all of his patents on all the electric cars.
Yeah.
Saying nothing else about the rest of the guy. That's different.
Yeah. But that patent shows something, but then someone has to do something with it.
That's what I'm talking about. So he gave the patent away for free.
Yeah.
Someone could take that patent, what he learned, and take it for free and make it better. I think they can take Tim's information, Mark's information, and if you're really smart, I'm not talking about the 6-month producer.
Yeah.
That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the person that for 10 or 11 or 12 or 13 years, that if you really could have had someone, not just one person you were exposed to. I don't know, man. I think there's an obligation for people that have figured it out. I just do. I think there's more of an obligation than the 3 or 4 people that you lead. I think we now have this. If there's the shitty part of social media and entertainment where we're listening to too much shit that doesn't help us,
yeah,
it's also an avenue for truly people who are great, who are intelligent, who are thinking properly, who can educate the world in a good, positive manner, I just think there's an obligation for us.
Yeah.
That's what I believe. We can differ over that.
Yeah.
I just believe that it is, and that just creates a thought like, oh yeah, maybe so. Like maybe I can go change and help somebody improve their lives. This is how people that a kid who was raised to be really judgmental and conservative Christian can just treat Tim for the human that he presents himself as.
Yeah.
And not as these ideologies, right? And so if the suburbs are the issue, then let's start sharing some ideas from outside the suburbs. I'm not saying to influence in a negative way.
Yeah.
To help in a positive way.
Yeah.
To understand that Tim's a good guy. That's how he should be treated.
Yeah.
Mark's a good guy. I might not champion your thing, but I'll champion you as a good human.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. It's just some thoughts.
Yeah.
I think this is how things happen. And if you ever do share something on social media and YouTube on how to be a great producer, I'm taking some credit, and I want my commission.
Yeah. I'll give you my 25 cents from YouTube.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, we get a few. It's such a joke, man. I don't know. Facebook sent us like a couple $100 like a few months ago or something.
Oh, nice.
Right? It's not really paying the bills though.
No.
So in 10 years, you really don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm kind of like leaving it open. I'm definitely working towards making that 10 years be that I'm producing my own content. And so we'll kind of see what that looks like. The industry is changing a lot right now.
A lot.
So we'll kind of see where the industry is at that point. So that's why I kind of think it's not something that I can say like, oh, this is going to happen in 10 years. Because I think the next 5 years are going to be a very interesting 5 years for our industry and what can and can't happen. And so then it's like, I will then have to adapt to that. And can I adapt to that? I think I can. I think I will.
You can. That's it. Will you?
But, like I said at the beginning, just because I can and will doesn't always mean that I'm going to find the success.
At the end.
Yeah.
I think we define our own success.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
I don't think the definition of success should be different, but we define what that success is.
Yeah.
I define success as whatever the thing is that you're setting your mind that you want to be, want to accomplish, the vision for your life you want to live, as long as you're working every day to achieve that.
Yeah.
That's success. It doesn't have to be just the end game. So many people will say, well, I want success to look different for me. No. The definition needs to be the same. Are you working every day towards pursuing the life that you want?
Yeah.
You are. So in 10 years, if you're still doing that, then I think you're successful.
Yeah.
All right, give us a parting shot here for the Northern Kentucky 2023. Going to go back to L.A. and live the California life.
Yeah.
What's in Tim's mind of back to work beyond the pandemic and COVID? What's on your mind going into 2024?
I think in 2024, my kind of big focus will be on creating a better environment for my position, so for accountants. It's kind of like I'm on the board at my local in the union, and so that's something that we're intentionally looking at as far as like working to make our lives better, to improve the ability to not only, get more money, but to also attract more positive people, and it not just be people that are looking for a job or don't know what to do and just kind of like falling into it and like they are who they are and they're as good as they're going to get, but people who are intentional about wanting to do this, whether they want to stay in accounting forever or whether they want to be like me and become a producer, but are willing to not just treat this as a stepping stone, but as a destination for as long as they need it to be a destination before they move on to their next spot. But that while they're here, they're well taken care of, they're respected, and that they're understood.
Bring on 2024.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
Can't wait till we see those production videos.
Yeah.
All right, man. Hey, have a safe trip back after New Year's.
After New Year's, yeah.
All right, man. And just make California act a little bit better.
Oh, it can only do so much.
Thanks, man.
Thanks.
Okay.
Have a good one.
Yeah.